Hi everyone, Anthony here from Level Up Your Teaching. Today we're going to look at two different vocabulary activities that you can use on Zoom or any other video conferencing software. As this is the first set of activities that we're going to look at, I thought it'd be a good idea to look at one particular function of the software that we're going to use. The chatbox. The chatbox is such a useful tool. It can be used to practice grammar, vocabulary, just like we're going to do today, or writing. It's so useful because you can change the dynamics of the lesson. You can do group work, pair work, individual work, or even whole classroom activities, just like we're going to do today. So without further ado, let's start with the first one. The first one is a very popular activity that we'll be using a lot in our face-to-face lessons. It's a word association game. If you're not familiar with this type of activity, that's fine. It's a game in which either the teacher or a student comes up with a word, and then the rest of the students have to say the first word that comes in mind related to the first one. So for example, if I say the word jobs, some of the words that your students can come up with are engineer, teacher, or shop assistant, and so on. It's a great activity and I really love it, using it at the beginning of my lessons because it gets my students going while at the same time I can practice previously taught vocabulary. So, why don't we give it a go and try setting up the activity just like we would do in a real online lesson? As you can see, I'm using Zoom. It doesn't really matter which software you're using as long as there is a chat box. Now, one of the problems you might actually face at the beginning of this activity is that your students are typing words all over the chat. One way to deal with this is by asking them to type the day and the month which they were born. So, for example, Ilaria and Daniel, thanks for coming here today and help me with this activity. What I would like you to do is type the day and the month that you were born using the format I'm going to type in the chat box. So they should... That's brilliant. So Daniel was born the 7th of June. So that's good. That's summer. And Ilaria on the 17th of March. So, based on the chronological order, Ilaria will go first and then Daniel. That's a great way to make sure that your students are answering in an order. You can do it in a speaking activity, using the chat or not, it doesn't really matter. So now let's go back to our main activity. As we said, the word is going to be jobs. So I'm going to type the word in the chat box. And Ilaria and Daniel, what I would like you to do now is type words related to the word jobs in the chat box. Let's give them a couple of seconds. And Ilaria is typing engineer, which this word has quite a difficult pronunciation. That's really nice. Daniel is coming up with a simple word, but still correct, teacher. And last one, shop assistant, which is also correct. So as you can see, your students can go on and keep writing words as long as they know and they have words to type or until they make a mistake. Ilaria and Daniel, thank you very much for joining me here today to show this activity. Bye for now. Regarding feedback, I normally let my students pick up any wrong answers. It's a great way to involve them while they're still waiting for their turn. In a nutshell, it's an activity that works amazingly in an online environment. It helps me activate my students' schemata, and by activating their current knowledge, then it serves as a diagnostic tool. Now, let's say, for example, you're planning to teach 8 new words, and your students type 6 out of the 8 words, then you know that you have to make your lesson and you have to make your target language a bit more challenging. And to be honest with you, I'd rather know this at the beginning of my lesson rather than when I've already started teaching the new vocabulary. Now for the next activity. It's an activity that works amazingly both at the beginning of the lesson and in the middle. So let's say you've presented some ed and ing adjectives, and now you would like to practice the difference between the two. Why don't we go back to Zoom and have a go at setting up this activity too? One of the things you would like to do before you start this activity is to do some concept checking and make sure that your students understand what an adjective is. So let's do an example now. Guys, I want you to look at me and complete my sentence. The lesson was very, What's the missing word? Okay, that was quick. Yep, interesting. That was the word I was looking for. Now, Daniel, what type of word is interesting? Is it an adjective, a verb, an adverb? What do you think? Yep, that's correct. The word interesting is an adjective. So now what I would like you to do, guys, I'm going to give you two phrases. I was adjective after the lesson. The lesson was adjective. I want you to complete the sentences with the correct adjective. So again, this is pretty much a gap-filling exercise that we always do for our control or semi-controlled practice, but in an online environment. You know, I actually take a few seconds for your students to type the sentences, and you really have to make sure that they are writing the sentences rather than just the word adjective. It's just better to have the word in context. So Ilaria finished her first one. I was motivate after the lesson. The lesson was motivating. Ilaria, would you like to look at the first one more time? I was motivate after the lesson. Or I was motivated. That's brilliant. And Daniel, what about you? Let's give a few more seconds to Daniel before he writes his answer. I was interested in the lesson. That's brilliant. That's correct. So Daniel is using the phrase, the word interested, the adjective that we used. The lesson was interesting. That's brilliant. That's correct. So as you can see, you give your students the space to practice the target language and looking at the difference between the two adjectives as you would do in a normal gap-filling exercise from a book or from a website. Again, thank you very much, guys, and let's go back. What's great about this activity is that it allows for some differentiation in your students' answers. For example, one student might say, I was so confused after the lesson, or I was so tired after the lesson. Also, if you have a mixed ability group, you might get some stronger students typing exhausted and exhausting, which is great emergent language. The chat box can be a safe environment for your students. The stronger ones will always start typing first, and it will help the weaker ones or the less confident ones by reassuring them that their answers are correct. So, everyone, that's all from me. Thanks again for watching my video. Please like and subscribe if you like the content, and let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions or questions related to the video. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.